The mansion sat like a monument to power on the edge of Ikoyi, Lagos, an expanse of white marble walls, tall glass windows, and perfectly manicured lawns that rolled down toward a private lagoon. To anyone on the outside, it was paradise. To anyone peering through the iron gates, it looked like a dream. But for Amara, the only daughter of Chief and Madame Ojukwu, it was a prison. She was 24 years old, born into obscene wealth and influence. Her father was one of the most feared oil magnates in the country. Her mother, a politician's daughter, carried her status like an heirloom jewel. They gave Amara the world in material things, cars she wasn't allowed to drive, designer clothes she rarely wore, invitations to parties she wasn't permitted to attend. They protected her so tightly that she had never truly lived. Her days were structured: tutors, piano lessons, etiquette training, charity appearances. She smiled when she was told to smile, walked when she was told to walk, and kept silent when the adults around her discussed her future. Suitors had come, sons of other magnates, politicians, billionaires in waiting. She rejected them all. Not because she was arrogant, but because she felt nothing. No spark. No fire. Her life was beautiful, but it was empty. Until the day she noticed him. He was bending over the rose garden that afternoon, sweat glistening on his back as he trimmed the thorny branches with steady hands. He wore a faded shirt, sleeves rolled high, and trousers smeared with soil. His movements were calm, deliberate, like a man who knew the earth, who spoke to it in silence. Amara had seen many gardeners come and go, but this one was different. There was something about the way his body moved, the curve of his jaw, the quiet intensity in his eyes when he lifted his head. Their eyes met. For the first time in years, she felt her breath hitch. Something stirred inside her chest, something she had no name for but had longed to feel. She lingered by the balcony longer than usual that day, pretending to read a book while her eyes kept drifting to him. When he left, she found herself waiting for his return. Days turned into weeks, and she discovered his name, Chike. A young man from Enugu, 26, who had come to Lagos searching for work. He earned little but worked with pride. His skin was the deep brown of tilled soil, his shoulders broad from labor, his smile rare but disarming. At first, their exchanges were fleeting. She would say, "Good morning," and he would bow his head respectfully, never lingering. But soon words began to stretch. "The flowers look more alive these days," she told him one afternoon. "They bloom when they're cared for," he replied softly, not daring to meet her eyes too long. That simple answer lingered in her mind all night. Soon she invented excuses to pass by the garden. Sometimes to ask about plants she never cared for, sometimes to simply breathe the same air as him. He was polite, distant, but there was always a spark in his eyes when they spoke, one he tried to hide. It was during one of those evenings, the sky painted in hues of crimson, that the spark flared. She bent low to smell a rose, her dress brushing against his arm. Their eyes met, closer than ever before. Neither moved. The world stilled. And then, like the whisper of fate, his hand brushed hers. Electricity shot through her veins. She pulled back abruptly, heart racing, but that night she couldn't sleep. She replayed that touch over and over, imagining what it would feel like if his hands truly explored her skin. The mansion's rules were unspoken but absolute. Staff and family were never to mix. The gap between them was wider than the ocean. She was a princess, he was a servant. Yet the more forbidden it felt, the deeper the pull became. Their stolen conversations became longer, bolder. He told her about his childhood in Enugu, about nights under kerosene lamps, about dreams bigger than his pocket. She told him about her cage, how being rich felt like being suffocated in gold chains. They laughed. They shared secrets. And one evening, under the heavy scent of hibiscus, they kissed. It wasn't planned. It wasn't polite. It was hunger breaking free. His lips were rough, tasting of sweat and earth, while hers were soft, tasting of forbidden sweetness. She melted against him, clutching his shirt, her body trembling as though she had been waiting her entire life for this moment. When they finally broke apart, gasping, she whispered, "We shouldn't." "I know," he replied, his forehead resting against hers. "But I can't stop." Neither could she. Passion found them in secret places: the empty pool house, the quiet corners of the garden, the unused guest rooms. Each encounter grew bolder, more desperate. For Amara, it was more than sex. It was freedom. For the first time, she wasn't Chief Ojukwu's daughter. She wasn't a puppet. She was a woman, desired, worshipped, alive. Chike touched her as though she were not made of wealth but flesh, as though every inch of her skin was sacred. He made love to her slowly, reverently, as if memorizing her body. Then sometimes, urgently, like a man starving. In his arms, she learned what it meant to moan without shame, to tremble beneath another's weight, to surrender. She gave herself fully, recklessly, without fear of discovery, because the risk only heightened the ecstasy. The scent of roses, the rustle of leaves, the sound of cicadas, all became accomplices to their forbidden fire. But passion, no matter how sweet, cannot stay hidden forever. It began with whispers among the staff, how the young madam lingered too long in the gardens, how her eyes followed the gardener. One maid caught them holding hands briefly and hurried to tell Madame Ojukwu. Her mother watched her closely after that. Questions became sharper. Where were you? Why is your dress rumpled? Why do you smile so much these days? Amara deflected with practiced ease, but her heart pounded each time. She knew discovery was only a matter of time. Yet she couldn't stop. Couldn't let go. One night, as rain lashed against the windows, Chike slipped into her room. They made love fiercely, desperately, knowing the walls of their secret world were closing in. Her nails raked his back, his breath burned against her neck, their bodies locked like two storms colliding. In that moment, she wasn't afraid of being caught. She only feared losing him. The next morning, her father returned early from a business trip. Chief Ojukwu was a man of sharp instincts, and nothing escaped his gaze. When he saw the way Amara's eyes flickered toward the garden, when he noticed the faint bruise on her neck, suspicion took root. He said nothing. He only watched, waiting. And as Chike bent to trim the roses, Chief Ojukwu's eyes narrowed. Something was about to break. The storm had passed, but the mansion was no longer quiet. Chief Ojukwu had returned, and with him came an invisible weight that pressed over every corner of the estate. His presence was like thunder, felt before it was heard, feared before it was seen. The staff moved quicker, voices lowered, eyes averted. For Amara, every moment felt like walking on glass. She carried the heat of last night's passion in her body, the way Chike had held her, the way his breath had filled her ears, the way her skin still tingled where his hands had been. But now she also carried her father's eyes on her back, watching, measuring, waiting for her to slip. The next day, Amara stood by the fountain, book in hand though she wasn't reading. She had come only to see him. Chike appeared at his usual hour, pushing the wheelbarrow filled with cut stems and trimmed leaves. His shirt clung to his chest, damp with sweat, the sun painting his skin in bronze. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world narrowed to only two heartbeats, hers and his. She wanted to run to him, to throw herself into his arms. But instead, she stayed still, masking her longing behind calm lips. Later, when the shadows stretched long, she found him near the tool shed. The air between them was thick, urgent. Without words, she pulled him inside. His mouth was on hers instantly, desperate, hungry, their bodies colliding like fire meeting gasoline. His hands slid down her waist, gripping her as though to anchor her to the earth. She gasped against his lips, trembling with desire and fear. The scent of soil and sweat filled her lungs, intoxicating. "Amara," he whispered, his voice rough. "We're playing with fire." "Then let it burn," she breathed, pulling him closer. And they burned, right there against the wooden wall, the heat of their bodies defying every rule written for them. She felt alive, reckless, addicted to the danger of it all. That evening, Madame Ojukwu entered her daughter's room unannounced. Amara barely had time to compose herself, hiding the flushed glow of her skin with powder. Her mother's sharp eyes scanned the room, lingering on the bed too neatly made, the faint scent of musk in the air. "Where have you been?" she asked. "In the library," Amara replied, voice steady though her heart raced. Her mother stepped closer, brushing her fingers against Amara's cheek. "You're different these days. There's a light in your eyes. A woman only looks like this for one reason." Amara forced a laugh. "Mama, please, don't start again." But Madame Ojukwa's gaze hardened. "Remember who you are. Remember the blood in your veins. If I discover you are lowering yourself with anyone unworthy, God help you, Amara." The words clung like chains even after her mother left. Yet when night fell and Chaik slipped quietly into her room, Amara welcomed him with trembling arms. The fear only sharpened the sweetness of their passion. Chief Ojukwa did not move with suspicion. He moved with strategy. For days he said nothing. He watched. He noted. He calculated. He had not built an empire by reacting blindly, he built it by setting traps and letting others reveal themselves. So one evening he dismissed half the staff early and sent guards to patrol the grounds discreetly. He remained in his study, pretending to be buried in paperwork, while his ears strained for the faintest sound. It didn't take long. At midnight, the faint creak of footsteps along the corridor reached him. He rose silently, moving like a hunter. When he reached Amara's room, the door was ajar. He pushed it open and froze. There, bathed in the pale glow of moonlight, was his only daughter, bare-skinned beneath the sheets, tangled in the arms of a man who should have been trimming hedges, not touching the heir to his empire. Rage consumed him. His fist slammed against the doorframe. Amara jolted upright with a cry, clutching the sheet to her chest. Chaik sprang to his feet, his body taut with fear yet defiance in his eyes. "Bastard!" Chief Ojukwa thundered. "How dare you? In my house? In my daughter's bed?" Amara's voice cracked as she cried, "Papa, please." "Silence," he roared, pointing at her with a trembling hand. "Do you know what shame this brings to me? To this family? A common laborer? A nobody?" Chaik stood firm, jaw clenched. "Sir, with respect, I love your daughter." The audacity of those words made Chief Ojukwa laugh bitterly. "Huh? Do you think love can buy her security? Can love protect her from this world? You are nothing. Nothing." He turned to the guards rushing in. "Get this filth out of my house." They seized Chaik, dragging him out as Amara screamed, clawing at her father's arms. Tears streaked her face as she cried his name, but the gates closed behind him that night with the sound of iron crushing hope. The next morning, Chief Ojukwa summoned his daughter to the dining hall. He sat at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone. "You will never see him again," he said coldly. "If you value your place in this family, you will forget his name. I will not have you destroy everything we've built because of childish lust." Amara's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "It is not lust, Papa. I love him." His eyes flashed. "Then you are a fool. And if you disobey me again, you will know what it means to live without my protection." She rose from the table, her tears falling silently. "Then I would rather live as a fool in love than as your caged bird." Her words struck him like a slap, but she walked away before he could respond. Days passed. Chaik did not return, but Amara's longing grew unbearable. Every corner of the mansion reminded her of him. The roses he trimmed, the shed where they kissed, the bed where he had made her tremble. One night, desperate, she bribed a driver and slipped out. She found Chaik in a small rented room on the outskirts of Suralire, living with almost nothing. Yet when he saw her, his eyes lit up brighter than any chandelier in her father's palace. They embraced like starving souls, devouring each other's lips, shedding clothes with trembling hands. On the thin mattress, their love became reckless and raw, driven by the knowledge that every moment might be their last. "I can't lose you," she whispered, tears mixing with sweat. "You won't," he vowed, his body pressing into hers, every thrust a promise. "Not even death can take me from you." In that shabby room, with peeling paint and cracked walls, she felt freer and more loved than she ever had in the mansion of marble. But freedom never lasts long. By morning, her father's men were already circling the neighborhood, their black SUVs prowling like predators. Someone had seen her leave, someone had whispered to the chief. As Amara lay in Chaik's arms, the rumble of engines echoed outside. "Amara, Chike whispered urgently, pulling her close. "They've found us." Her heart froze. The door rattled. Heavy fists pounded. "Amara!" Her father's voice thundered from the other side. And with that, the fragile sanctuary of their love shattered again. The door shuddered beneath the thunder of Chief Ojukwu's fists. Amara's body trembled as she clutched the sheet around her, pressed against Chike's chest. "Open this door now," her father roared, his voice shaking the walls of the tiny room. Chike's arms tightened around her. His eyes, steady even in fear, told her silently, "I will not let them take you from me." But the door splintered under a guard's boot, crashing open. Men stormed in, black-clad, expressionless, their presence choking the room of air. Chief Ojukwu followed, towering, his fury burning brighter than the fluorescent light overhead. "Amara!" he barked. She cried out, shielding Chike as the guards advanced. "Papa, please. Don't hurt him." Her father's glare could have cut steel. "Get dressed. Now." She shook her head, clutching tighter to the man she loved. "I won't leave him." The chief's hand slammed against the flimsy wardrobe, rattling it so hard it nearly toppled. "Do you want to disgrace me? Do you want the whole of Lagos to laugh that my daughter threw herself at a gardener like a street girl?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "This is not disgrace. This is love." The word hung in the air like an insult. Her father barked an order, and the guards seized Chike, dragging him up by his arms. He didn't fight back, but his jaw clenched, his chest rising with restrained rage. Amara screamed, thrashing against her father's grip as he pulled her away. Her nails dug into the chief's agbada, but he was immovable. She could only watch as Chike was hauled out into the waiting SUV, swallowed by tinted glass and heavy doors. The convoy roared into the night, taking her father's fury and her lover with it. The next morning, Chike was led into the chief's private study, a room few men entered and came out whole. Mahogany shelves lined the walls, filled with books of law, politics, and war. Behind the desk sat Chief Ojukwu, not as a father now, but as a conqueror facing an enemy. Chike stood with his wrists still raw from the guard's grip, but his eyes burned steady. The chief studied him in silence for a long time, letting the weight of the moment crush the air between them. Then he spoke. "Young man," he said slowly, "I built this empire from nothing. I know the smell of poverty. I crawled through it until my knees bled. And now, when I have given my daughter the life of a queen, she chooses to lie with a man who reeks of the soil I buried decades ago." Chike did not flinch. "With respect, sir, I love her. And she loves me." The chief's lips twisted into a thin, humorless smile. "Love." He spat the word as though it tasted foul. "Do you think love fills stomachs? Do you think love buys protection? Do you think love will keep her safe in this world of wolves?" He opened a drawer, pulled out a leather briefcase, and placed it on the desk. With a click, the clasps opened, revealing neat stacks of dollars. The crisp notes glowed under the dim light like a promise of salvation. 10 million naira equivalent, the chief said coldly. "Yours. Right now. All you have to do is disappear. Leave Lagos. Leave Nigeria if you must. Never see my daughter again." The silence that followed was heavy. The money gleamed like an easy escape from a lifetime of struggle. 10 million could buy a house in his village. 10 million could start a business, build a future. 10 million could erase years of hunger and hardship. For a moment, temptation flickered in Chike's eyes. The chief saw it and leaned back, satisfied. "Take it. Be wise. She will forget you. Women always do." But Chike's hands did not move toward the briefcase. Instead, he lifted his gaze, steady and unyielding. "I am not for sale," he said. His voice was calm, but it struck the chief like a whip. "You think money is everything. But to me, Amara is worth more than this room full of gold. If I take your money, I betray her. I betray myself. And then, Chief, I will truly be the nothing you already believe I am." The chief's face darkened. "You are a fool." "Maybe," Chike said softly, "but I'd rather be a fool with love than a rich man with regret." The words hung in the air like a sword. For the first time in years, Chief Ojukwu was speechless. When Amara learned what her father had done, She stormed into his study, her hair disheveled, her voice breaking with rage. "How could you?" she cried. "You tried to buy him off like he is one of your business partners. Like he is something to be erased with money." The chief stood, towering over her. "I did it to protect you. To protect this family. Do you know what people are already whispering? That my daughter throws herself at common men like a market girl. I will not let you destroy me." Her tears fell freely. "This isn't about you, Papa. This is about me. I finally found someone who loves me, not my name, not your money, not this mansion. And you want to take him away because your pride cannot accept it." His face softened for just a second, the father flickering behind the mask of the empire. But pride slammed the door shut again. "You will forget him," he said firmly, "or you will regret it." Amara lifted her chin, her voice steady despite the tears. "Then I will regret it. But I will not forget him." The days that followed were suffocating. Guards shadowed Amara everywhere she went. Her phone was taken, her outings restricted. The mansion walls grew higher than ever, her father's prison tightening. But love is a stubborn flame. One night, with the help of a sympathetic maid, Amara slipped out through a side gate. She found Chaik waiting, his eyes filled with both relief and fear. Without a word, she ran into his arms. They fled together, boarding a bus that rattled through the night toward a life unknown. For the first time in her life, Amara tasted freedom not gilded in marble but painted in dust, sweat, and the hum of restless streets. They rented a small room in Ajigunal, one bed, one bulb, one window. It was nothing. But to Amara, it was everything. There, she cooked for the first time in her life, laughing when she burned the rice. There, she washed clothes by hand, water splashing across the cement floor as Chaik teased her clumsy scrubbing. And at night, when the world outside groaned with noise and chaos, they made love on their thin mattress, their bodies tangled in heat and devotion. It wasn't luxury, but it was love. Pure, raw, unfiltered. And yet, the shadow of her father loomed. When news spread that the Ojukwu princess had run off with her gardener, society erupted. Newspapers whispered. Politicians sneered. Rivals laughed. It was humiliation on a national scale. Chief Ojukwu's fury knew no bounds. He sent men to search, threatened those who aided them, tightened his grip on the empire. To him, it wasn't just about love anymore, it was war. But the more he tried to break them, the stronger their bond became. Amara, once fragile in her silks and jewels, now stood firm in hardship, her love forged like iron. Chaik, once a laborer with nothing, now carried himself like a king, because in her eyes he was one. Weeks turned into months. The money they had scraped together dwindled. Hunger knocked at their door more often. Chaik worked odd jobs, breaking his back for pennies, returning each night exhausted. Amara tended to him, massaging his sore muscles, whispering hope into his ears, loving him with her body when words failed. One night, after a day of backbreaking labor, Chaik collapsed beside her. His voice cracked. "Maybe your father is right," he whispered. "Maybe I cannot give you the life you deserve." Amara silenced him with a kiss, her tears mingling with his sweat. "You give me life, Chaik. That is more than all his money." Their lovemaking that night was not about desire but survival. Every touch was a vow, every kiss a plea to hold on just a little longer. But outside, the storm was gathering. One morning, Chaik returned from work to find black SUVs parked outside their room. Men in suits stood waiting, their faces unreadable. Inside, Amara sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes red from crying. "Your father came," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He wants to see you. Alone." Chaik's chest tightened. He knew what it meant. Another battle. Another test. But this time, the war was no longer just about love. It was about survival, dignity, and the price a man was willing to pay to keep both. As he stepped into the waiting SUV, Amara clutched his hand. "Don't let him break us," she begged. He kissed her forehead gently. "He can take everything from me. But not you." The door slammed shut. The car pulled away. And Amara, left standing in the silence, prayed this would not be the last time she saw the man who had given her freedom in a world built on chains. The silence of the city night was broken only by the distant hum of cars. From the balcony of their modest one-room flat, Amara leaned against the rusted railing, the glow of the moon brushing against her face like the hand of a forgotten god. She no longer wore the silk gowns of her past, no longer dined beneath crystal chandeliers. But what she did have was something infinitely rarer. Chaik's arms wrapped around her waist from behind, his body pressed against hers as though shielding her from every storm. Life outside her father's mansion was not the dream she had once imagined. They woke each morning to a leaking tap, to cracked walls that whispered poverty. Chaik found temporary work as a driver. Amara tried her hands at baking bread to sell. But through every struggle, their love did not weaken. It intensified, sharpened like steel under fire. And yet, in the shadows of every embrace, the ghost of her father's disapproval lingered. Chief Obi had not forgiven her. He had not called. Not once. His silence was a wound that pulsed every night, a reminder that love had come at the cost of blood ties. Still, Amara did not regret. Chief Obi was a man of vast resources, but the one resource he had never learned to manage was his daughter's heart. In the quiet of his palatial study, he sat one evening, his glass of brandy untouched, the world's finest cigars ignored. For all his billions, the silence in his mansion had grown unbearable. He had spies, of course. Men who reported that Amara now lived like a pauper with her gardener lover. That she walked barefoot in markets, that she sold bread like a common girl. Chief Obi thought it would break her spirit. Instead, every report told of her laughter with Chaik, of how she clung to him even in hunger. His rage was no longer at Chaik, it was at himself. In his pride, he had tried to buy the young man off, waving millions as if love could be priced. But Chaik had refused. Again and again. That refusal haunted him more than anything. For what kind of man turned down fortune unless he truly loved? One night, Chief Obi rose abruptly, his decision made. He would confront them, not to break them this time, but to see with his own eyes the truth of their love. The pounding at the door startled Amara and Chaik from their embrace. It was past midnight, and visitors in their neighborhood usually meant trouble. Chaik reached for a stick by the corner, protective as always. Amara pressed her fingers against his wrist, whispering, "Careful." When the door opened, the sight froze them both. Chief Obi, impeccably dressed in an agbada worth more than the entire flat, stood at the threshold. Behind him, two black SUVs glowed under the dim streetlight. "Father," Amara's voice trembled. Chaik stiffened, torn between respect and defiance. Chief Obi stepped inside, his eyes sweeping the tiny room. The cracked ceiling, the single bed, the faint scent of fresh bread. He stood there, saying nothing, his face unreadable. Finally, his deep voice broke the silence. "So this is where my daughter sleeps. The heiress of Obi Group, reduced to this." Amara's eyes welled with tears, but she did not falter. "This is where I live, father. And I am happy." For the first time in months, Chief Obi's gaze shifted, not to his daughter, but to Chaik. The young man stood tall, sweat glistening on his chest from the heat of the room, yet his eyes did not bow. "You refused my money," Chief Obi said, his voice low. "Do you know how many men would have disappeared without a second thought? Yet you stayed." Chaik spoke carefully, but his words rang like iron. "I love your daughter, sir. That cannot be bought. Not by you, not by anyone." Silence again. Long, heavy. Then something broke in Chief Obi's eyes. Not weakness, but a surrender of pride. "I misjudged you." His voice cracked, almost imperceptibly. "I thought you were after my wealth. But you've proven me wrong." Amara pressed a trembling hand against her mouth. What happened next felt like the earth itself shifting. Chief Obi, the man who commanded governors and terrified businessmen, lowered his head. His voice grew softer. "I don't want to lose my daughter forever. If she has chosen you, then I must choose you too." Amara let out a sob, rushing forward, wrapping her arms around her father's broad chest. For the first time since her childhood, he held her without conditions, without pride. Chaik remained still, humbled, his throat tight. Chief Obi released his daughter and turned to him. I will not just accept you. I will make you more. From tomorrow, you will come with me to the office. You will learn. You will lead. If you can win my daughter's heart, perhaps you can also win the weight of my empire. The words stunned them both. Chike bowed his head slowly. I don't know what to say, sir. Chief Obi placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Say nothing. Prove it. The weeks that followed were surreal. Chike, once the gardener who trimmed the hedges of Obi's estate, now walked the marbled halls of Obi Group headquarters in tailored suits. At first, the board members scoffed, whispering behind polished glasses that this was madness. But Chike, fueled by both humility and determination, surprised them. He worked harder than anyone, staying late into the night, learning the intricacies of business deals, logistics, oil contracts, and negotiations that could make or break empires. Where others relied on privilege, Chike relied on grit. Amara watched with pride as her lover transformed, not into someone new, but into the man he was always meant to be. The same hands that once coaxed life from soil now built bridges across industries. And through it all, their passion did not dim. If anything, it burned brighter. Their nights were fire, Amara whispering his name against the sheets of their new home, Chike worshipping her body as though each kiss was an oath never to betray what they had fought for. Every touch was layered with memory, the secrecy, the defiance, the hunger that had once been forbidden. Months later, under the golden lights of a grand ballroom, Chief Obi made his declaration. Before governors, tycoons, and foreign investors, he raised his glass and said, "This young man beside me was once just a gardener in my home. Today, he is not only my son-in-law but also the managing director of Obi Group. He has earned my trust, my respect, and my legacy." The applause thundered through the hall. Cameras flashed. Amara, radiant in a gown of flowing silk, squeezed Chike's hand until tears of joy spilled down her cheeks. He leaned close, whispering in her ear as the world celebrated them. "We made it, Amara. They tried to bury us, but we grew." She turned, pressing her lips to his, unashamed, unafraid. And for the first time, her father did not look away. In the end, love had conquered, not because it ignored hardship, but because it embraced it. Amara had chosen freedom over wealth, passion over obedience. Chike had chosen honor over greed, resilience over fear. And Chief Obi, once blinded by pride, had chosen redemption. Their love, once a forbidden flame, now burned at the heart of power. Not in secrecy, not in shame, but in triumph.